The last time I felt normal, I was standing at the edge of a national park that didn't appear on most maps the way it should have. The trees didn't just grow upward here. They leaned inward, like they were listening. The air was cold enough to sting the inside of my nose, yet strangely still, as if even the wind had learned to move quietly. I remember the ranger handing me the paper map. It was slightly damp, like it had been folded and unfolded too many times by people who never came back to ask for a better one. He didn't look at me when he spoke, just pointed toward the trail and said, "Stay where the markers are visible." That was all. No warning, no explanation, just that sentence hanging in the air like a weight. By the time I stepped onto path, the world behind me already felt distant. My phone lost signal in under 5 minutes. My footsteps became the loudest thing in existence. Even my breath felt too loud, too alive, like it didn't belong in a place so carefully silent. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to adjust itself around me. Branches shifting slightly after I passed, shadows settling where light used to be. And then I saw the first carving. My name, etched into a tree that I swear I had never seen before in my life. Yet it looked older than anything in the forest. The wood around the letters was dark, almost bruised, like it had been carved into again and again over time. I stepped closer, thinking maybe it was a coincidence, a prank, something explainable. That's when I heard it, not from behind me, not from ahead, but from everywhere in the trees at once, whispering my name back to me. And I remember standing there, unable to move, realizing something that didn't make sense in any rational way. I had never been in this forest before, but the forest had definitely been waiting for me. That's when I saw it. Dawn sits low over the national park. Cold air, damp soil, pines standing still like they are holding their breath. I stepped onto the trail just after sunrise, map in hand, paper slightly soft from mist. The route looked simple at first, but something felt off. The line on the map didn't fully match the ground in front of me, as if the forest had shifted overnight and forgotten to update itself. I kept walking anyway. The deeper I moved, the quieter it became. Not normal quiet, oppressed kind of silence, like the world had leaned in closer. Trail markers stood along the path, wooden posts with faded paint. I passed one. Then I paused. Something pulled at my attention. I turned back. The marker was slightly behind where it should have been. Not much, just enough to notice. I blinked. The forest didn't move, but I still felt like it had. I walked again. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time felt soft here, like it didn't want to stay sharp. Another marker appeared, then another, each one slightly misplaced compared to the last memory of it. I told myself it was fatigue, early confusion, a trick of light through trees. Still, I stopped checking behind me too often, because every time I did, something felt rearranged. A break in the trees opened suddenly. And there it was, a ranger station. Wooden structure, old paint peeling. Windows dim like closed eyes. It wasn't on my map. I stepped closer. The air near it felt warmer. Too warm for the morning chill. Inside, I saw no movement. No figures. Just a stillness that felt maintained. As if someone had cleaned the silence and left it behind. I approached the door. It creaked slightly on its own. Inside, empty desks, dust floating in thin light, paper scattered but untouched by wind. And then, a blink. I looked away for only a second. When I looked back, the building was gone. Only trees stood there. Same ground, same soil, no trace at all. Just fog curling where the structure had been. My breath slowed. I told myself I had walked past it somehow. Missed angle, missed distortion. But the forest didn't feel like it agreed. It felt aware of my thought, like it had heard it. I continued forward. The trees grew denser, closer, not physically at first, but emotionally, like they were watching the space between my steps. And then I saw it, a wooden plank nailed between two trunks. Carved words, deep, fresh, do not continue after sundown. I touched the carving. The wood was colder than it should have been. Almost wet, almost breathing. For a moment, the forest went completely still. Not a leaf moved, not a sound shifted. Even my own breathing felt delayed, like it didn't belong to me. Then, a faint rustle, not from around me, from everywhere at once. The warning stayed in my mind longer than the words themselves. Do not continue after sundown. I checked my watch. Morning had already begun to tilt towards something heavier, but the forest didn't show time the same way anymore. Shadows didn't match the light. I stepped back from the carved sign, and that's when I noticed something else. The path behind me. It wasn't the same path anymore. Slight bends had shifted. Distance felt altered, as if the way I had come was slowly forgetting how to exist. I turned forward again. The trail continued, but it didn't feel like it was guiding me. It felt like it was deciding. Every step I took seemed pre-approved. Every turn already expected. And the forest, it no longer felt like scenery. It felt like presence. Quiet, patient, surrounding. A soft wind moved through the trees. It carried something almost like a voice. Not words, more like intention. A reminder. Do not continue after sundown. I didn't know if I was hearing it, or remembering it before it happened. The light grew weaker between branches, not because of clouds, but because something in the forest was filtering it, as if daylight itself was being asked to leave. I kept walking, not faster, not slower, just forward, because stopping felt worse than continuing. And somewhere behind me, the ranger station, or what used to be it, no longer mattered. Only the path remained. And even that no longer felt like it belonged to me. Morning fades into deeper woods. The trail I followed no longer feels like a trail. It feels borrowed. The ground is softer here. Damp moss under my boots. Pine needles sticking slightly, as if the forest doesn't want to leave footprint behind. I keep moving anyway. Not because I'm certain. Because stopping feels like being noticed. Somewhere ahead, I find it. A wooden wall, standing alone between trees that don't form any clearing around it. It shouldn't fit here, but it does, like it has always belonged. The wood is old, darkened by moisture and time that doesn't feel honest. Carved into it are names. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some deep, some faint, some overlapping like they were written over each other again and again. The air around it feels colder. Not colder like weather, colder like attention. I step closer. The names are still, fixed, for a moment. Then I blink, and something shifts. One of the names changes position, not physically moving on the wood, but rearranging itself in my perception, like the memory of it refuses to stay stable. I look away, then back again. The same name is different now, spelled differently. Or maybe it was always that way. That thought feels wrong in my chest. I trace a finger near the carvings. The wood is damp, almost warm in places, as if it remembers being touched. A faint sound moves through the air behind me. Footsteps, slow, not close enough to belong to anything I can see. I turn. Nothing. Just trees leaning inward slightly, like they were listening and now pretending they weren't. The wind rises gently, soft, controlled. It passes through the wooden wall, and for a moment, it sounds like it is reading, not the words aloud, but the names themselves. Each pause in the wind feels like a syllable forming just out of reach. I stop breathing for a second, because one of the names catches my attention. It looks familiar, too familiar. My hiking permit is still in my pocket, folded, slightly damp from earlier mist. I pull it out with slow fingers. The name printed there should feel ordinary. It doesn't, because when I look back at the wall, the same name is there, carved into the wood, fresh compared to the rest. Still sharp, still waiting. My throat tightens without sound. I step back, just one step. The forest reacts immediately, not loudly, subtly, as if everything around me has adjusted its focus. The footsteps return, closer now, still unseen, but no longer distant enough to ignore. They match my stillness. When I stop moving, they stop too. When I shift, they shift. A quiet imitation, not chasing, not retreating, just following the idea of me. The wind lowers again, and with it, the forest feels heavier. The wooden wall creaks softly, not from pressure, from attention. The names seem less like carvings now, more like impressions pressed into something alive. I try to look away again, but my eyes keep returning, as if something inside the wall is asking to be remembered. A faint voice slips through the trees. Not a word, not a sentence, just sound shaped like recognition, like something trying to say my name without fully understanding how. My skin tightens. Cold spreads through my hands. I step back further, and the wall seems longer now, extending slightly to the left. Or maybe I simply didn't notice how far it stretched before. The wind passes again, slower this time, careful, and it feels like it lingers over one section of names, like it is choosing. When it moves on, I realize something worse. Some of the names are changing again, not randomly, not at once, only when I am not looking directly at them. Every time I glance away, something shifts, quietly, patiently. My breathing feels too loud, too physical, like it doesn't belong in this place. I step sideways, trying to leave the wall behind, but the forest adjusts with me. Trees subtly repositioning their attention, not moving, just aligning. Another sound, footsteps again, still not visible, but closer than before. Behind me, beside me, maybe even inside the space I'm standing in. I don't turn this time, because something tells me it won't matter. I look back at the wall one last time, and the familiar name is gone, replaced, not erased, just rewritten, as if it never belonged there, as if it never belonged anywhere. The wind softens again, and this time it feels like it is waiting for me to understand something I don't yet have words for. I step away slowly. The forest does not stop me. It simply remembers I was here, and continues listening. The forest was still mourning when I noticed it. Cold air, thin mist between the trees, damp ground pressing softly under my boots. The compass in my hand trembled, not slightly, not naturally. It spun like it had lost every rule it once knew, nor should have been ahead of me. But nothing ahead felt like direction anymore. The needle stopped, locked, pointing behind me. I turned slowly. The trees looked the same in every direction. Pale trunks, wet bark, quiet leaves holding their breath. I walked forward anyway. Minutes passed. Maybe more, maybe less. A familiar rock appeared near the trail. Jagged edge, moss on one side. I had passed it before. I stopped. The compass spun again in my hand, like it remembered fear. I turned back. The same rock appeared again. Closer. The forest was repeating itself. Not echoing, not mirroring, repeating. A faint whistle slipped through the trees. Soft, patient, almost human. It came from the direction the compass refused to stop pointing toward. Behind me, I should have ignored it, but silence felt heavier than the sound. So I followed. The path bent without reason. Each step felt like it had already happened once before. The trees shifted closer every time I passed them again, not moving fast, just nearer, like they were listening harder each time I returned. The whistle never changed. Only distance did. I found it just after the forest opened into a small clearing. The air felt warmer there. Too warm for morning. Too still for anything alive. A campsite. Tent standing upright. Slight tilt to one side. A lantern glowing softly near the entrance. The flame did not flicker with wind. There was no wind. I stepped closer. The ashes in the fire pit were still warm, not burning, not cold, waiting between states. Someone had been here recently. Too recently. A half-written journal lay open on a log. The ink stopped mid-sentence like the hand had been taken away mid-thought. The page moved slightly. Not from air, from absence. The tent fabric shifted. A slow, inward pull, like something inside had just left or was still deciding whether to stay invisible. I knelt near the fire pit. My fingers hovered above the ashes. Heat rose gently, soft, unfinished. Footprints circled the campsite, not leading in or out, just around, again and again, like whoever made them never decided to leave. The lantern flickered once. In that moment, the forest beyond the clearing felt closer, listening through the trees, waiting for me to notice I was not the first one here, and maybe not the last. I left the campsite, but the forest did not return to silence. It deepened. The path narrowed, slowly, almost politely, as if it was making space for something else. The trees were not straight anymore. They leaned, subtle at first, a tilt when I paused, a shift when I looked away. I thought it was exhaustion. I thought my eyes were adjusting, but they followed me, always slightly angled inward, watching. When I stopped walking, I heard it, whispering, not words at first, just patterns in the air, breath caught between bark and leaves. When I stepped closer, it stopped. When I stepped back, it returned. The forest only spoke when I was still. I placed my hand on one of the trunks. The bark was rough, cold, but beneath it, patterns, lines that looked like fingerprints pressed into wood from the inside out. Human, almost human. I pulled my hand away. The whispering stopped instantly, like something had noticed contact. The path behind me felt different now, narrower, heavier, as if the forest had decided it did not need to give me space anymore. The trees leaned a little more, not toward the sky, toward me, and for the first time, I understood something I could not explain. The forest was not around me anymore. It was paying attention to me. The forest changed after that moment. Not loudly, not suddenly, just softly. The air grew heavier with every step I took away from the leaning trees. Cool dampness pressed against my skin like a quiet warning. Then the fog arrived, not as weather, as presence. It formed in isolated pockets between the trunks, pale and dense, like breath held too long in a closed room. I stopped walking. The fog stopped too. That was the first time I noticed it. It did not drift. It waited. When I moved again, it followed second behind. Not instantly, not naturally, like something remembering what I had already done. I turned my head slowly. Shapes moved inside it. Tall, thin, walking. But when I focused, they dissolved into nothing but gray air. Stillness brought clarity. Movement brought distortion. I learned that without understanding why. And yet, I kept moving. Because behind the fog, I felt something I could not name. Not lost. Guided. The ranger station appeared like it had always been there. Wooden structure. Faded paint. A flag hanging too still. Inside, light was on. Warm. Familiar. Almost comforting. A ranger sat behind the desk. I did not hear him arrive. I only saw him already there. He looked up slowly. His eyes did not settle on me. They shifted slightly past me, toward the windows, toward the forest edges. "You've been reported missing," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. I stepped closer. "No one reported me," I said quietly. He opened a logbook. Pages turned by themselves, as if time had practiced a motion already. My name appeared in entries I did not remember existing. Different dates. Different times. Impossible overlaps. The ranger's hand paused midair, before pointing toward the radio. It crackled. Then, my voice, calling for help. Not now. Earlier. Or later. I could not tell. The ranger stood slowly, and still avoided looking directly at me. Always just to the side. Always toward the forest. Like it was the only thing in the room he trusted. The clearing came without warning. No path led to it. It simply opened. At its center floated a fire. No logs. No stone ring. No source. Just flame. Suspended in air like a thought refusing to disappear. It burned softly. Constant crackling without fuel. Around it, shadows gathered. Not cast. Collected. They stood in loose formation, like silent attendees at something unspoken. I approached slowly. The heat touched my skin at first step, then faded as I got closer, as if it rejected proximity. I stopped just outside its reach. Whispers moved through the air, not coming from the fire, coming from around it. When I focused, they stopped. When I relaxed, they returned. I understood nothing, but my body did. It did not want me near the center. And yet, the center felt like it had been waiting for me longer than I had been alive. I left the fire behind. But the forest did not let me choose direction anymore. The path moved before I did. A step would form before my foot lifted. A turn would appear before I considered it. At first, I resisted. I tried to stop. The trail tightened. Trees shifted closer, narrowing the space until standing still felt heavier than walking. So I walked, and the forest adapted. Each step matched my rhythm perfectly. Not mine copying it. Something else setting it. Behind me, the trail erased itself gently. No marks left behind. Only continuation ahead. I no longer felt like I was choosing movement, only agreeing with it. The forest was no longer around me. It was ahead of me, deciding what I would become next. The wind returned after a long silence, but it did not feel empty anymore. It carried fragments, not sounds, memories. A childhood laugh I almost recognized. A door closing in a house I had forgotten. A name spoken softly by someone I could not place. Each gust felt intentional, directed, like it was selecting what I was allowed to remember. I stopped walking. The forest responded with stillness, and in that stillness, the wind spoke clearly for the first time. Not words, tones shaped like familiarity, like someone trying to sound like everything I once trusted. I pressed my hands over my ears. The silence that followed was worse, because even silence felt like it was waiting for permission. And in that moment, I was no longer sure if the wind was carrying memories into the forest or pulling them out of me. The forest shifted again near dusk, light thinning between branches, shadows stretching longer than they should. That was when I saw it, a survey tower, tall, metal frame, old with steps climbing into nothing. Then when I blinked, it was whole again, standing upright like it had never fallen. I approached slowly. The air around it felt different, dry, static heavy, like a pause breath. The first step creaked under my weight. The sound echoed too long. I climbed. Each step upward changed the forest. Not outside, inside the view. Trees below rearranged themselves when I looked away. Paths bent into new shapes when I blinked. The horizon refused to stay still. It looped, as if the world had forgotten it was supposed to end somewhere. I reached the top platform. Wind touched my face. Cold, thin, almost artificial. I looked down and saw myself, standing at the base, still, watching upward. My breath caught. The figure below tilted its head slightly, like it had noticed me noticing it. I stepped back. The moment I looked away again, it was gone. Only forest remained. Normal, quiet, wrongly calm. I climbed down fast. Halfway, the structure creaked again. I turned. The tower was broken. Collapsed wood, rusted metal. No height, no climb. I reached the ground and realized I could not remember whether I climbed up or only imagined the way down. The trees grew denser after the tower, closer, warmer, almost breathing. My skin felt strange beneath the foggy light, like something had already touched it. That's when I saw the bark. A tree stood slightly apart from the others. Its surface was smooth in places, then rough in patterns that didn't belong to nature. I stepped closer and froze. My name was carved into it, not scratched, not etched, embedded like it had grown there. The letters pulsed faintly, in rhythm with my heartbeat. I stepped back instinctively. The forest did not react, but the tree did. Another name appeared beside mine. Different language, same meaning. I touched the bark before I could stop myself. Cold shock moved in my fingers. And then, memories. Not mine. A place I had never visited but could feel. A voice calling my name in a tone that felt older than language. I pulled my hand away fast, breathing uneven. Around me, more trees began to show markings. My name repeated. Different scripts, different sizes. Like the forest was learning how to say me, or remembering it better than I did. My reflection in a wet patch of bark no longer felt like mine. It felt shared, as if something inside the forest was slowly writing itself into me, one letter at a time. I found the camera just after dawn, half buried in damp leaves. Cold metal slick with moisture. It was still on. That should not have been possible. I didn't touch it at first. I just listened to the soft clicking inside it, like it was thinking. Then the screen flickered, and I saw myself, standing in the forest. But not at the moment I was standing there now. Earlier, Or maybe later. I watched the footage play like a memory I never lived. Me entering the trees again and again. Slightly different each time. Different posture. Different hesitation. Different silence between steps. Multiple versions of me moving through the same frame. Overlapping. Out of sync. The audio cracked softly. Breathing layered over breathing. Mine and something close to mine, but not quite. The camera angle shifted on its own. No hands. No movement. Just turning, like it was searching for something it already knew it would find. I leaned closer. The forest behind me in the recording looked wrong. Too aware. Too still between movements. As if it was waiting for the next version of me to appear. The footage jumped. Sudden glitch. And then I saw the camera, recording itself, pointed at the ground. No operator. No presence. Just endless looping capture of nothing and everything at once. My reflection flickered across the lens for a second, then vanished. The recording continued anyway. The forest opened without warning. Trees thinning. Ground flattening. Air turning strangely still. A lake waited there. Perfectly calm. No ripples. No movement. No wind touching its surface. But the sky above it was wrong. Night, even though it was day. Stars scattered across the reflection, like scattered ash across black glass. Slow moving, alive in a way light should not be. I stepped closer. My reflection appeared, but it didn't match my body. In the water, I stood still. On land, I was already moving. I froze. The reflection did not. It remained calm, watching me with a patience I did not recognize. A faint sound rose from beneath the surface. Not bubbles. Not water. Something like breathing held under too long. I spoke without meaning to. Just a whisper of my name. The lake responded. The stars shifted. Slightly, as if listening had weight. As if sound could bend the sky inside the water. I crouched near the edge. The surface stayed smooth. But something beneath it moved closer. Slow. Intentional. A presence that did not rise. Only waited for me to stop pretending I was alone. I stood up quickly. The reflection stayed behind a moment longer than I did. Then followed. I turned once. There was nothing. Only trees. Only silence. I walked forward. And felt it, a pressure behind me. Not footsteps, not movement, just derangement. When I turned again, a campsite stood where there had been nothing before. Tent already pitched, supplies placed neatly, firewood stacked with impossible order, as if someone had been here longer than time allowed. I stepped inside slowly. The air felt warmer than outside. Too warm, too familiar. Footsteps circled the tent outside. Slow. Even, no source, just repetition without a rival. I stepped out quickly. Nothing there, but the ground was disturbed. Circles carved into dirt like invisible pacing. That night, I did not sleep, because I realized something simple and wrong. The camp did not appear when I arrived. It appeared after I passed it, like it was learning where I had already been, and preparing to meet me there again. Morning did not feel like morning anymore. Light came unevenly through the trees, soft gold turning to pale gray without reason. And then the forest changed shape, not physically, emotionally. A swing hung from a branch. Old rope, weathered wood seat, swaying gently with no wind. I stopped walking. It shouldn't have been there, but it was familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Another step forward. A toy appeared near the roots. Faded colors. Cracked plastic, half buried like a forgotten memory, refusing to stay buried. A voice drifted through the trees, calling my name. Soft, familiar, too familiar. I turned toward it. Nothing there, only deeper forest. But I felt it, not nostalgia, distortion, as if the forest was taking pieces of my past and placing them where I could see them, wrongly, deliberately. A rewritten version of childhood hung between branches now. Things I almost remembered, but not quite the way they were supposed to be. I pressed my hand against a tree. It felt warm, like skin remembering touch. And for a moment, I could not tell whether I was remembering the forest, or the forest was remembering me better than I ever had. The air felt thinner that morning. Not cold, not warm, just absent in its usual weight. I found the emergency beacon tucked into my pack, without remembering when I placed it there. Small device, scratch casing, a single red light that blinked like a tired heartbeat. I didn't hesitate. I pressed it. The sound it made was soft, almost polite, a signal sent into a place that didn't feel like it existed on any map anymore. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the forest listened, not moving, not reacting, just acknowledging. The red light on the beacon steadied, then flickered again. I waited. Silence stretched. Too long to feel normal. The trees around me stood perfectly still, their shadows sharp against the pale ground. Even the air seemed paused, as if it was waiting for permission to continue. Hours passed, or something that resembled hours. When the response came, it did not arrive like sound. It arrived like delay finally deciding to exist. A faint tone, distant, broken, then a voice. Mine. I froze. It was unmistakable. Not an imitation. Not an echo shaped roughly like me. It was exact. Do you copy? I'm still here. Static swallowed the rest. I lowered the beacon slowly. My hands felt distant from my body, like they belonged to someone watching instead of holding. I spoke without meaning to. I am here. The forest did not react, but the beacon did. It answered again, hours late, or minutes early. Time refused to agree with itself anymore. The coordinates appeared on the screen. They looked familiar, not because I had seen them before, but because they felt like they were waiting for me to recognize them. I followed them. I had no reason not to. The trees shifted as I walked, subtly tightening the space between them, not blocking me, not guiding me, just ensuring I stayed within reach of whatever the signal wanted me to become. The beacon continued to pulse in my hand. Red light, red light, red light. Each blinked slightly out of sync with my breathing. Then another message came through, distorted, slower. Return, you are closer than you think. I stopped. The forest did not. It simply continued existing around my paws, patient and unchanged. Closer than I think. I repeated it silently. The words felt wrong in my mind, like they didn't belong to language, only to intention. A gust of wind moved through the trees. It carried no sound, only direction. The beacon shifted slightly in my grip, pointing deeper into the forest without physically moving, as if something inside it was more aware than I was. I tried turning away. The signal strengthened. I turned back. It softened, not guidance. Preference. I started walking again. Each step felt slightly delayed, like the ground needed a moment to confirm I was allowed to continue. The trees leaned subtly inward as I passed, not touching, not blocking, observing. The beacon's light grew steadier, almost comforting. That was the most unsettling part. Comfort arriving from something that should not understand it. Another transmission came through, this one longer, slower, more deliberate. I can see you now. My breath stopped halfway. I looked around. The forest looked unchanged, but it felt observed, not watched from a distance, watched from inside the spacing between things. I held the beacon closer. Where are you? I whispered. The response came instantly, too instantly. You're already inside the range. The forest tightened again, slightly, like it understood the concept of distance better than I did. I walked until the light dimmed, until even the red pulse felt like it was coming from farther away than my hand. The beacon stopped receiving new messages. Only the original signal remained. Steady, patient, waiting. And for the first time, I realized something that made my steps slow without my permission. The emergency beacon was not calling for help. It was confirming arrival. The forest no longer felt like it had a direction, only continuity. I walked for what should have been hours, yet nothing aged around me. Light stayed the same. Shadows refused to move forward in time. Then I saw it, the place I had started. Not similar, not familiar, the exact beginning. The same broken branch near the ground. The same pale stone half buried in moss. The same air that felt slightly too still to be real. I stopped. My throat tightened without reason. I turned around slowly. Behind me, the forest stretched endlessly. No clear difference between forward and back anymore. Only repetition pretending to be distance. I walked again, just to confirm it wasn't a mistake. The path responded immediately. Landmarks appeared in the same order they had before. A fallen log, a leaning tree, a patch of darker soil, shaped like a memory I didn't want. I blinked. They shifted slightly. When I blinked again, they reset, not changed, rewritten. Time felt thinner here, like each step removed something I didn't notice losing. My thoughts grew slower, not tired, simplified. The forest was not guiding me anymore. It was replaying me. I touched the bark of a nearby tree. It felt warm, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten, like I had touched it before many times and forgotten every instance except the last. I tried to remember how long I had been walking. The answer refused to stay in place. Numbers slipped away as soon as I formed them. The forest felt aware of that failure, not mocking it, correcting it. I started walking again, faster this time, but the path adjusted instantly. The exit I thought I saw ahead dissolved into trees that looked newly arranged, not blocking me, just replacing what I expected. Each loop felt slightly shorter, each return slightly quieter. Something was being removed in small, careful pieces, not my surroundings. Me, I stopped again, breathing uneven now. The forest waited patiently, as if it already knew I would continue, because I always had. And somewhere deep in the repetition, I realized the most unsettling part. The forest didn't need to trap me. It only needed to remember me long enough for me to stop noticing I was already gone. It started with the air changing, not moving, not shifting, just compressing. The forest fell into a silence, so complete it felt physical. Even my breath sounded distant, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I stopped walking without meaning to. The world did not echo my stop. It simply accepted it. No wind, no insects, no rustle of leaves pretending to be alive. Only pressure, like the silence had mass now. I swallowed. The sound felt too loud inside my own body. I took one careful step. It landed with delay, not a normal delay, a delayed recognition, as if the ground needed time to decide I had moved. Then the echo came, not immediate, late, a soft repetition of my footfall drifting through the trees seconds after it should have ended. I turned my head slowly. Nothing moved, but everything felt aware of the fact that I had looked. The silence thickened again, heavier than before. My chest tightened. Breathing became something I had to think about. In, out. Even that felt monitored. I tried speaking. Just a word. It came out muted, like the air refused to carry it. The moment it left my lips, the forest reacted, not visibly, but internally, a shift in pressure, like something far away had leaned slightly closer. I stopped speaking immediately. That was worse, because the silence responded as if it preferred it. I stood still, minutes stretched, or something pretending to be minutes. The forest felt like it was holding its breath with me, waiting for whoever would break first. Then I heard it, not a sound, a missing sound. Footsteps that should have been there, but weren't, approaching, somewhere between the trees. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. I turned slightly. Nothing visible, but the silence bent, as if something was passing through it instead of disturbing it. The pressure increased. My ears rang softly, even without noise. I realized then that silence was not absence here. It was presence. And something inside it was moving closer, without needing permission from sound itself. I stepped back instinctively. The forest did not react. It only adjusted, like distance no longer mattered. Only awareness. The unseen presence moved again, closer this time, not through space, through stillness. I stopped completely. Even my thoughts felt quieter now, as if the forest had learned how to lower the volume of my mind. The silence pressing until it felt like it had edges, like walls forming without shape. Something was approaching, not through sound, but through the removal of everything that could warn me it was coming. And for the first time, I understood that silence was never empty here. It was waiting to be filled. The silence did not break. It only changed shape. Between the trees, the space felt occupied. At first, I thought it was a trick of light. Dark gaps between trunks, shifting shadows. But the gaps stayed even when I stared directly at them. Still, patient, wrong. A figure stood there. Then another, not stepping forward, not emerging, just existing in the spaces the forest forgot to fill. I blinked. They did not vanish. They only softened at the edges, as if reacting to attention. When I stopped looking directly at them, they became clearer. That was the first rule I learned without being told. They only appear when not observed. I turned my head slightly away and felt them sharpen in presence. Tall shapes, thin limbs, no clear faces, only outlines that felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain, like remembering a dream I never fully had. They did not move, but they shifted closer anyway, not walking, repositioning between moments. The distance between them and me had changed without permission. I stepped backward slowly. A branch cracked under my foot. Instantly, every figure tilted just slightly toward the sound, not reacting like animals. Reacting like attention itself had direction. I froze. The forest followed. No wind, no sound, just stillness tightening around me again. The figures returned to their original positions. But now they were closer than before. I could feel it without measuring it, like the air between us had been reduced. I looked directly at one. It blurred instantly, almost gone. I looked away. It returned. Perfect clarity. That was the second rule I learned. Observation erases them. Uncertainty reveals them. My breathing slowed without my consent. The forest was teaching me how to look incorrectly. I tried to step forward. The ground resisted slightly. Not physical resistance. Expectation resistance. Like the path did not approve of deviation. The figures between the trees shifted again. Slightly. Closer. Always closer. And for the first time, I noticed something worse than their presence. They did not have footprints. The ground beneath them remained untouched. No pressure. No imprint. As if they had never needed to arrive at all. A whisper moved through the trees. Not from them, but through them. Soft. Familiar. Almost like my own voice trying to speak from the wrong place. I turned my head sharply. All figures vanished at once. Silence returned. But not the empty kind. The watched kind. I stood still, waiting for the forest to decide whether I was allowed to believe what I had seen. And somewhere between the trees, I felt them still there. Not gone. Only waiting for me to stop looking again. I found a map folded inside my pocket. I don't remember putting it there. The paper felt warm. Not from heat. From use. Like it had been held too many times by hands that weren't mine. I opened it slowly. Ink was already moving. Not smudging. Rewriting. Lines stretched across the page. Forming paths I had never seen before. At first, it looked normal. Trails. Curves. Familiar forest shapes. Then I realized something was wrong. New routes appeared every time my eyes moved across the page, as if the map was reacting to being witnessed. I looked away for a moment. When I looked back, an entire section had changed. Old paths were gone, not erased, rejected. New ones replaced them, branching deeper into forest like veins forming under skin. The paper grew damp in my hands, warm, slightly pulsing, like something alive beneath it was breathing slowly. I held it tighter. The ink shifted again, this time forming symbols I didn't recognize, then forming them again in a different order, as if testing whether I would understand them in another life. A faint sound rose around me, not from the forest, from the map, soft scratching, like writing happening in real time, without a hand. I traced one line with my finger. The moment I touched it, the path extended ahead of me in the forest. Not metaphorically. Physically, a new trail appeared where there had been nothing before. I stepped back immediately. The line on the map paused, then continued drawing itself elsewhere, as if adjusting to my hesitation. I tried folding it. It resisted slightly, not forcefully, but knowingly, like it understood closure was temporary. I opened it again. More paths had appeared, some intersecting in impossible ways. Routes that led back into themselves. Circles disguised as journeys. I felt my stomach tighten, because I realized something quietly terrifying. The map was not showing me the forest. It was deciding it. Behind me, I heard a soft rustle. I turned. Nothing, but the map in my hands shifted again. This time drawing a line directly from my current position. Forward. Always forward. No alternatives. No exits. Only continuation. The ink stopped for a moment, then slowly wrote something at the bottom edge of the paper. Not words I fully understood, but one part was clear enough to feel in my chest. It wasn't describing where I was going. It was confirming where I already was. Lost inside a route that was still being written, with me inside it. The ranger station appeared again when I wasn't looking for it. It simply existed where the trees loosened. Same wooden walls. Same quiet windows. Same still flag that never learned wind. But something felt finished here, like the forest had stopped pretending. Inside, the light was on. Warm. Unmoving. The desk was empty at first glance. Then I saw the logbook, already open. Pages turned slightly on their own, as if someone had just finished reading me. I stepped closer. The ink was fresh. Too fresh. The first line read like a report, not written in present tense, but past. The subject was last seen continuing deeper into the restricted zone. I froze. My breath felt louder than the room allowed. I turned the page carefully. More entries, each one describing me in ways I did not remember becoming. Movement patterns, direction changes, moments of hesitation, all recorded, all complete. Even things that had not yet happened to me felt like they already had. A chair behind the desk shifted slightly. Not occupied, just remembered. The radio crackled once. I didn't touch it, but it spoke anyway. My voice again, older this time, calmer. Tried to leave. Path no longer responds to exit requests. I stepped back instinctively. The radio continued. No pause, no break, just continuation. You're still within system range. The words landed too cleanly, too intentionally. I looked toward the windows. The forest outside was still, watching, not moving closer, not moving away, just holding position like it had been waiting for this exact moment to be acknowledged. I turned back to the logbook. Another entry had appeared, fresh ink spreading across the page as I watched. The ranger station is now unoccupied again. I looked up. The room felt emptier than before, not physically, structurally, as if even the idea of someone being here had been removed. The radio clicked one last time. Then my voice spoke softly. Final, certain, do not mark the exit. There is none left to return to. A long silence followed, the kind that does not wait, the kind that decides. I stepped toward the door, but the handle felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to a place I had never truly entered. Behind me, the logbook closed itself slowly, as if the forest had finished writing what I was, and now only had to keep me consistent with it. The forest felt narrower that day, not in space. In permission, light slipped through the branches, but it no longer reached the ground the same way. Everything looked slightly dimmer, even under open sky. I walked forward, and felt it immediately. The trees were closer than before, not rushing, not growing, just deciding. Each step I took seemed to reduce the world behind me. Paths I had passed didn't remain open for long. They softened, then disappeared. I turned once. A trail I was sure I had used was already gone. Only trees stood there now, perfectly arranged, like nothing had ever been between them. I tried to go back. The air resisted gently at first, then more firmly, not blocking me, correcting me. So I stopped trying. The forest allowed that, and immediately the space behind me changed again. Gaps between trees closed slowly, like eyelids shutting without effort. I felt my chest tighten. Not panic yet. Realization forming before panic could arrive. The forest was not trapping me forward. It was removing backward. I kept walking, not because I chose to, because stopping felt like asking permission I was no longer guaranteed to receive. The light grew weaker, even though nothing blocked the sky, as if daylight itself was being asked to reconsider staying. Branches shifted slightly whenever I passed them, not touching, just repositioning. Every movement I made seemed to teach the forest something about where I was not allowed to return. I looked ahead. The path still existed. Barely, thin, fragile, like it was being drawn in real time, and could stop at any moment. Behind me, I felt empty space where paths had been, not darkness, erasure. I reached for a branch to steady myself. It moved away slightly before I touched it, not avoiding me, guiding me forward. I swallowed hard. The sound felt too loud in the thinning air. And then I understood something I did not want to understand. The forest wasn't making it hard to leave. It was making leave a direction that no longer existed. It began with small inconsistencies. Things that shouldn't have needed attention, needing it. My footsteps sounded slightly off. Not louder, not softer, just delayed, like the forest was repeating them a moment after I made them, unsure if they were real the first time. I stopped walking. The echo stopped too, then started again, one beat late. I turned my head slowly. Nothing behind me, at least nothing visible. But the air felt occupied in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. Every movement I made had a twin, not matching exactly, just slightly out of sync. A breath I took arrived back to me half a second later, like the forest was trying to learn how I existed. I knelt near a shallow puddle in the soil. Water sat still inside it, reflecting broken branches and pale sky. I looked into it and froze. There were two figures, me, standing still in the reflection, and me, moving slightly differently than I was. I lifted my hand. The reflection hesitated before copying it. Too late, too precise, not natural imitation. Delayed understanding. I stepped back. The second figure in the water stayed a moment longer before retreating, like it didn't want to lose synchronization. I whispered without meaning to, "Who's there?" The forest did not answer, but everything aligned slightly tighter after question, as if acknowledging it. I walked again, and noticed it immediately. My footsteps were not alone anymore, not beside me, not behind me in distance, inside my timing. Every step I took had an echo step that didn't fully belong to me. A second rhythm layered under mine, matching, adjusting, correcting. I stopped again. The second rhythm stopped too, one beat late, then resumed when I moved. My breathing tightened. Not fear yet, recognition. Something was learning me in real time. The trees around me felt closer again, not physically, socially, like they were watching the synchronization happen and confirming it was correct. I pressed my hand against my chest. My heartbeat felt normal, but underneath it, there was another pulse trying to align. Not faster, not slower, just closer. I looked at the puddle again. The second figure was clearer now, not separate, not beside me, but slightly overlapping my own position, as if the boundary between me and not me had started to blur. I stepped back quickly. The reflection did not follow immediately, then corrected itself. Reluctant, patient, matching me again, and for the first time in the forest, I realized the worst kind of presence is not one that follows you. It is one that learns how to move when you do, until the difference between you and it stops being visible at all. The exit appeared without ceremony. No light, no opening in the trees, no sign of release. Just a space that felt less dense than the rest. I stopped at its edge. The air here was different, not free, just unfamiliar. For a moment, I almost believed it was over. Almost. Then the forest behind me shifted slightly, like it had heard the thought. Memories of how I entered began to fade. Not all at once. Carefully, like something removing ink from paper without tearing it. I turned back once. The trees did not look like obstacles anymore. They looked like they had always been arranged this way. Waiting. The path behind me felt less certain with every breath I took, as if remembering it required effort the forest was no longer willing to support. A whisper moved through branches. Soft, close. My name, not spoken like a call, spoken like recognition. like something confirming I was still here. For now, I stepped toward the exit, my foot paws midair. Not fear, uncertainty I could not trace back to its origin. Behind me, the forest felt warmer, not welcoming, familiar, like something that had already decided I belonged to it more than I belonged to anything outside it. The exit remained open, but it did not feel like leaving. It felt like forgetting something important on purpose. Another whisper came, closer now, my name again, longer this time, not repeated, extended, like the forest was trying to hold it inside itself a little longer before letting it go. I lowered my foot slowly. The exit did not close. It simply felt less real than everything behind me. Memories of the world I came from softened at the edges. Names, places, reasons, all becoming distant enough to question whether they were ever sharp to begin with. I turned fully toward the forest. The exit remained behind me, still there, still waiting, but no longer convincing. The trees leaned slightly inward, not blocking me, inviting stillness instead of movement. The whisper came again, this time not calling, confirming my name, repeated through the branches until it no longer felt like sound, only belonging. The exit faded in my awareness without disappearing physically, like something I could still see but no longer choose. And in the quiet that followed, I understood the final truth the forest had been building step by step. It was never keeping me inside. It was slowly making everywhere else feel like I had never truly been there at all.